I'm your host, Leah Rolling.
And I'm Cari Kenzie. Welcome to Shift Happens. Discover the leader within. This podcast is designed to disrupt the way you live, lead, and love. At Shift, we challenge traditional narratives and believe that inner wisdom is the key to every decision.
Are you ready to explore a new paradigm of both living and leading? We'll dive deep into our innate strengths as women: compassion, curiosity, intuition, grace, vulnerability, and love. The shift, it's about to get real. Rediscover the power within and transform your life. Stay tuned. It all starts now. Hello, beautiful friends. Welcome to the show. Cari and Leah, we're your hosts, and we're getting right into it today. We've all said it. Communication is hard. But what if the real issue isn't communication itself, but the lack of why behind the what? Today in the show, we're breaking down the silent crisis, I'll call it, in how we connect, right? We assume, we react, we interpret, right? We hyperlink to past experiences, right? To confirm our own biases, to confirm our winning strategy, right? Rather than truly listening, rather than truly understanding the why of the future. We're more interested in the what of the past. And in so doing, we limit not just our conversations, friends, but our leadership, our relationships, our impact, our growth, our legacy. We limit life itself. It's a big conversation, but we're ready to take it on. And because we have so much to talk about as it relates to this conversation, we're just going to go right in. We're going to change that up for you. In so making and infusing meaning into every conversation and create deeper understanding. That is the goal of the episode today. So welcome, friends. Welcome, Cari.
I love you.
Hi.
Love this. And I love that we kind of dropped a little nugget of what was to come in our last conversation, right? Because this is so, it's such a powerful, and as we have said so many times, when we think, ooh, let's bring forward this conversation, the universe is like, let me make sure you're ready for it. Right? Let me make sure that you've got all the lessons and all the insights and maybe a little extra touch of something of frustration that just helps you to be able to understand this conversation more deeply. And I would say the past couple of weeks, I think for both of us, have really showcased what it means when you don't allow the space for that conversation and what it looks like when you really do. Right. And there's such a contrast between. Yes. There's such a contrast. But really, the only thing that is different, it's such a stark contrast, but the only difference is in an alignment. That's how significant alignment truly is.
Yeah.
Right? With self, with the conversation, with the people that you're with.
Yeah. What would you say if we were to really give our listeners an actual example? I have a beautiful personal one, and I know we have a professional one that literally just happened yesterday in real time. I think that is so beautiful because I think that's going to be more accessible to the listeners than if we just talk philosophical and scientifically about meaning and conversation and et cetera. So we're skipping all of that.
Good.
And we're going to go right into what happened. What's that?
I was going to say, because I'm a storyteller.
Yeah. Yes. So let's, and you might have a different story, but the one from yesterday I thought was just brilliant because what could have happened, like to your point, what could have happened if we only dealt with the what instead of dealing with the why and the limitation that it would have happened and the impact that it would have had on our resources and our time and our mission.
Yes. No, and it's so accurate. And you know what was fascinating is we'd had that type of conversation before, just the what conversation. And it was the what conversation that led us into the meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
And it's been fascinating to me along the way that we've got a couple of individuals on the team who really push back when they get the what.
Mhm.
They want to have a higher level, more in-depth understanding of what the whole thing looks like. And I love it because she even said today, well, if we look at the mission, literal words, if we look at the mission, then I'm not sure how all of this flows or what this needs to look like because it feels like there's a lot of things that are siloed right now. How many of us have that in our organizations, right? Siloed conversations.
Yeah. And how many of us, right? How many of us are part of organizations or maybe even in leadership in other organizations where those conversations are not welcomed? Innovation, curiosity, pushback,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
had a meeting yesterday to talk about a operating procedure about something that we were looking to implement in the near future.
A product offering,
A
right? It's
product offering. That was the
and it,
conversation.
and it
That was
sounded
the,
great.
and it sounded great. And we had that conversation, the
Yeah.
what conversation a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And and in it, because we say this a lot on the show, but we are our first client, both in
Mm-hmm.
our own coaching and in the modern culture, right? We allow the space for creativity. We allow the space for innovation. We allow the space for that line of questioning.
But it
And
takes
that's what
practice.
happened. Yes. And that's
Because
what
it takes
happened yesterday.
practice, because we don't always do that, right?
Mhm.
But here was the conversation on the back end to bring it back into the meeting, right?
Yes.
On the back end, everybody said that was such an amazing meeting. Did it have the outcome that I thought it was going to have? Meaning, are we implementing that particular product offering as we thought we were going to be in the next 2 months? No, we're not. So the meeting didn't end the way that I thought that it was going to end, but it was a beautiful conversation. The reason why, because nobody came with an ego.
Mhm.
Everybody checked it at the door. We sat down and we looked at the wholeness of the conversation, mission oriented. What does this mean? Right? And we began to ask deeper questions, challenging not so much the thoughts, not even the idea, but challenging in an understanding of, I want to make sure I understand this correctly. Is this product overtaking this one? Does it align right next to something that we have thought about doing in 6 months? And the more we peeled away the layers of the conversation yesterday, the more we realized it was an operating a SOP conversation, right? What is the process going to be, not a product offering,
Mhm.
right? And it was just, I messaged you during it. It was like, this is alignment
Mhm.
because everybody asked the questions. Then we finally understood the why. Why is it that we thought we needed this particular product right now?
Mhm.
Because we thought this particular product is the thing that we were going to need in order to be able to solve a process that we haven't fully defined yet.
Mhm.
Oh, let's define the process, then move forward into the product offering because it's going to make more sense at that time. People don't do that. We don't have that conversation. We don't feel comfortable in challenging each other to dive a little bit deeper. I mean, I've talked with clients about this. You know this. We've sat in meetings with clients together and we're like, you got to ask the question behind the question.
Mhm.
Because when you ask that top level, you're going to make an assumption as to why it is they brought that forward. You're going to make an assumption as to what their intention, underlying intention is. You have no idea because you never asked the question.
Right.
And you had that last week when you were diving through and you're like, it is all just an interpretation.
All just interpretation. That's all anything ever is.
Yeah.
I was I was chatting with a client just earlier today, which is no shock that we always like the universe just gives us all of these things so we can bring it forward to all of you, I believe. But there was and this was a personal one with him. I mean, it had to do with, him and his daughter. And the reality was is that he had something happened
Mm.
and he had an interpretation of the
Mm.
way that it happened,
Yep.
and he had his formula around the way that it should have happened in order for it to have gone right in his mind,
Mm-hmm.
right, as
Yep.
opposed to it not going the way that it should have, and therefore it went wrong in his mind.
Okay.
And so he was fighting the interpretation and he was trying to sell his interpretation to his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
What I reminded him of is his daughter had an interpretation of what had happened. And he had very good evidence and reason to believe that his interpretation was more viable and it was true.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right? And it was true. And her interpretation was not.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared with him, even if we could have checked his interpretation as truth, meaning what her argument was, if we could have taken her to the doctor and get her tested to prove him right, did we win?
Never.
Never. Never. And so what was available to him was to allow his daughter to have whatever interpretation that she had. And from that, challenge her in her interpretation, as opposed to try to sell her on yours.
Because you never will.
You never will. And if you do, it's false. Because basically, she just bought into an interpretation to shut you down.
Exactly.
And how many times do we do this? As opposed to meeting them where they are, right? By understanding the why behind their interpretation. We try to sell them on the why of ours. No one cares about the why of your interpretation. You have to care because it will trip you up and it will sabotage you. That's why you care about your interpretation. But you care about other people's interpretation to be a person, to be a leader, to be of influence, to be of impact, to be of care, and to be of consideration and compassion, and to be in connection with them. Otherwise, you're just going to be right in your own interpretation. And I don't know, that doesn't get you anywhere.
Never. Well, it never does, because you will never convince somebody else of your truth.
No.
Ever.
No.
Ever. I mean, like you said, you could take her to the doctor and the doctor could run the test and have it on a piece of paper and put it in front of her. And she's still going to say no, because she has her own truth. Yeah. She has her own perspective, her own belief systems, her own hyperlinks into the past that create the thoughts that she's having right now. Right? Yeah. We talked about this last week, you and I did. Like, we look for reference material all the time. We resource, right? I need a reference point for that. So a lot of times, the only way I know how to navigate a conversation, or I know how to navigate a meeting, or navigate the next thing that's coming up, is through a reference point of my past, right? So the second something comes up, my mind is already trying to find the file so that it knows the thing to do, because I've already done it before, supposedly, right? Which you've never done this particular thing that's sitting in front of you. I've never sat in that meeting yesterday. I've never sat in that meeting before. But if we didn't operate things the way that we operate them, openly, compassionately, with curiosity, just asking questions and allowing people to have conversations and really diving into understanding the why so that we can truly see that what, right? If we didn't have that, we'd all be pulling reference points from the past and pushing them into that meeting because we'd have thought we'd done it before. Oh, I know how to navigate this conversation. I've done this before. How many times have we done that? I've done this before, right? So I know exactly what to say. No, you do not.
No, you do not.
No, you do not. You're just looking for a reference point from the past. But that's the mind's easy wiring.
Yep.
Which is, again, why you have to stop yourself and ask a further question. And people don't like doing that. Why? Because people don't like to be questioned themselves. I don't want to ask you a question and go deeper, because then you're going to question me and go deeper. And anytime you question me, I'm going to take it as a judgment. I'm going to take it as I've done something wrong. I'm not thinking through this correctly. I'm dumb.
It is one of my, as I shared with you, one of the ahas that I had this past week was that we all have this quote unquote silent success formula that we operate from. And as long as we operate it and get what we want out of it, then it works. And when it doesn't, we throw a tantrum. Right? And to your file, to your resource file, to your past file, in meetings, we are listening for and looking for, right? We're listening for and looking for cues so that we can pull forward our winning strategy. We can pull forward our success formula in order to fill in the blank, in order to be right, in order to win, in order to have it go our way, in order to look like we're a hero, in order to have value, in order to matter, in order to be worthy, in order to whatever it is that your formula is. We all have one, right?
You've got to break this down for me, because seriously, because you're the formula girl, I'm not the formula girl. So when you say to me, everybody has a success formula, I'm like, you're really going to have to break that down. What do you mean by success formula? Because in my mind, because I don't operate by formulas, right? I'm like, well, I don't have a success formula, so to speak. So I want us to speak to that, because I know that there's others out there like that too, who just don't have, when you say success formula, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But I know that you've got one.
Yes, I got one. Yes, we all have one.
You're a formula girl.
It's a formula girl, but we all have one, whether we call it a formula or not. It's a subconscious programming that allows us to survive in the world. And we misrepresent surviving with success.
Got it. Yeah.
What it means is we've made it another day.
Exactly. Right.
But did we make it another day in ego? Or did we make it another day in compassion and consciousness and curiosity and clarity? Right? So the formula is we have confirmation bias based on our past. We look for, we listen for. What it is that we need to know, the lens with which we see the world, so that we can pull out our file and bring it forward in a way so that we can act, right? We can have a conversation, we can react, we can shut it down, we can, whatever it is, in order to fill in the blank. My formula is I look for and listen for when people need help, when there is support that is needed, right? In order to show up, in order to, and I've got many formulas, this is one of them, in order to feel valued, in order to matter, in order to feel worthy, to be able to take up space, to belong. That is my success formula. And when it doesn't go that way, meaning when I try to offer what I think is support, when I try to offer what I think is helpful and it gets shut down, I shut down. Because the in order to got shut down. Right? So when I don't feel like I am a valuable contributor to the conversation, when I don't feel like what I offer to the conversation matters, when it gets questioned, right? When my ego's at play and it gets questioned, I will shut down and I will get defensive and I will justify and I will argue and I will have my little tantrum because my success formula did not work. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. We just use different words, which is fascinating, which I love, right? Because when you say success formula, I go to like math and science and all of those types of things, which is just not my jam, right? I'm not the formula girl. I'm the, I don't need a plan. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be great. Again, I jump off and you have the parachute. Like, this is how we operate. It's good. No, we just use different terminology for that. So I love the way you explain it, because it's the subconscious play. And you're right. When that ego comes forward, that's when the judgment or the defense or those types of things come down. Because I've noticed for me, and we've had this conversation, like we've been doing a lot of heavy lifting on like a lot of the curriculum that we're bringing forward, right? A lot. And we had this conversation last night. When you are literally, I am looking at things like an eagle's eye, right? I've got it side by side. I am matching and matching and matching and matching. And then I send it over. And we've got one gal, I swear, she's got a better Hawkeye than I do, right? And she picks something out and pops me a note. I immediately, because the ego will pop forward real quick, I immediately feel like I've failed, right? Like I've done something. I take it as a judgment. And for a hot second, I get like just a little angry. And then it shifts right out. Right. Because that's something I've worked very, very hard on. Like that has absolutely nothing to do with me, but there is a piece of that hardwiring that does sit in my PI, like we've talked about, right? My hardwiring says that if something is wrong, I think it's like a people oriented thing, which is why I take it directly as like a hit. I don't look at it as the project. I look at it as the people, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because we just have different, we look at it in the same way, just different terminology. But it's fascinating because now here's a perfect example for both of us, right? Business partners. How would we ever know how to work together to be able to amplify one another in alignment if we didn't have those conversations of the why behind your what? How would I ever know? How would I ever know if you showed up into a meeting and you were frustrated and you shut down, right? Because you understand all the things that are at play and operating, and I don't. I would never be able to support you into alignment.
Mm-hmm.
That's why these conversations are so imperative. They're so important. They're not just important in meetings when you're trying to innovate and create and come up with that next best thing and keep it aligned in the mission, because you need to have the people that question. And question, by the way, is not a bad word.
Right.
That get curious, right, around it, but also with the people that you're navigating, right? With the people that you're leading, with the teams that you are really working and efforting to bring that innovation forward in, that you want them to be empowered. How would I ever know how to empower somebody on the team if I didn't understand aspects about them? If I didn't ask whys, and it doesn't mean I have to necessarily ask you why, right? I can, because you and I have that kind of relationship, but even within the teams and people that we navigate, sometimes understanding that why is really through going through that predictive index and seeing that and going, that's why. Like one of our salespeople, right, really wants to have all of the information. Like she's been reading, she's absorbing, she wants things in front of her, she wants details. I went and looked at her PI. She's a strategist.
Yep.
Very high D. She needs to have that in order to be able to set forth to achieve the task.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, there you go. When you understand that, you know how to navigate it, make sure she's got the tools so that she can, go out and do the thing that she needs to do.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways for that why behind the what.
So many different ways. That's right. And if you just assume that, and again, this is what we do, we assume that because this is the way we've done it, that this is the way that it should be done. And we bring in people like to that predictive index that aren't a high strategist and they do it this way.
Mm-hmm,
and they're asking other people to do it this way, how it might create some friction, because then they have to completely exhaust themselves to play by your rules.
Yes.
As opposed to empower them into rules of their own.
Yes.
So it's so beautiful, and it's just really important for us to understand that, and full circle back to the conversation that we were having and the importance of it. If there was just one person on that call, and I'm still in disbelief of it right now. If there would have just one person of the, I'm counting boxes, was there 6 people on the call? Only one of them, which is why it's so important when we talk to leaders of the world and their teams and their cultures. One of the most important things that you guys can do as leaders is have your alignment glasses on, because you're always scanning for where there's misalignment. If there was just one of the 6, and if you think about this, if there's just one of 6 people in a canoe rowing backwards, you don't go anywhere. If there's just one person that brought forward their ego, therefore out of alignment, they're operating with their winning strategy, and their winning strategy is in order to be right, in order to belong, in order to be of value, in order to fill in the blank, whatever their winning strategy is, and they bring that forward in the call, and they are questioned, or the purpose of the meeting is questioned, and they could have been like, why am I wasting my time? I wasted an entire hour. We came here to talk about this product, and now we're tabling it for tomorrow to incorporate it into a process. Can you imagine? Right? It would have taken one person to allow their ego to speak, to shut down the brilliance of that whole call.
Now, here, let's take this just a step further.
Let's do it.
You have the one person that comes into the meeting, right? The one person that comes into the meeting and say, like you say, that ego pops forward and they start throwing a temper tantrum in whatever way they do it. Okay. So let's use your example of shut down and pull back.
Yep.
Okay? So many people, it's a shutdown and a pullback. It's not an aggressive, it's why the hell? They're having that conversation in their minds.
Mhm.
They're just not having it out front. But
Mhm.
so they shut down, they pull back. If the anybody else on the rest of the team is not sitting consciously, having awareness, having compassion, or in their own alignment, it becomes a domino effect.
It does.
Because now I'm sitting, let's say I'm sitting and I'm witnessing and I'm seeing Leah on that call or whoever, and they sit down, they shut down, and they step back. And I don't have my compassion. I don't have my consciousness. I don't have the alignment that I need. And all of a sudden, I'm going to shut down. You want to know why I'm going to shut down? Because I'm like, oh, I must have done something. She's upset with me. Whatever I said upset her, right? And then I shut down. And then the next person who also doesn't have that alignment, and it becomes a domino effect. And that's what tears your teams down.
Yes.
That's why things don't get done in organizations, right? Because you have the one, all they have to do is hold silence. Sit back in their chair, hold silence, have a little anxiety come up, doesn't matter. Somebody else is going to feel it. And it's going to become a domino effect, and it's going to ripple through the room. But that's also why when you have a modern culture in your organization, if you see somebody shut down, sit back, then as an organization, we get to call forward into alignment.
Mhm.
Hey, I see something's happening. Is there something that we need to have a conversation about? Leah, did you have something that you wanted to say? Whatever that question is, in order to be able to grant the space to hold empathy and to have that integrity in that relationship, to be able to say, what is it that you need? What is it that you're feeling? I mean, we did that today. I was watching. I'm like, you guys know I'm watching you. I see your head nodding over there, right? I see you want to bring something up. Go ahead and bring it up.
Mhm.
Because you have awareness and you allow people the space.
Yes.
What would you say to that? I was like, wow, that's exactly what happens.
That's exactly what happens. And again, it just takes one.
One.
It just takes one to halt progress. And it doesn't just halt progress. I will say it takes you backwards.
Yeah, it
It
does.
takes you backwards because now we're starting all over again,
Yep.
right? And I normally don't like to believe in starting all over again because I always believe in progress. But it's not the progress that we believe your mission deserves.
Yes. That's exactly it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
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 So, what would you like to leave them with and invite them into as it relates to the Modern Culture podcast?
You know, ooh, that's a double loaded question there, girl.
You're welcome.
Left. Okay, so the first, like immediately what I was going to say is always tap into the why. Ask one more question. Just ask one more question before you respond and see what you can get beyond that. And then second, I would say, oh my God, you got to come on the ride with us for the Modern Culture Show. You have to come along the ride. These conversations amplified, right? Bringing more insights, more depth. We're going to be talking principles, the leadership principles that are integral to conscious, compassionate leaders. This is where we're going to be launching next week.
We've talked a lot about the modern culture on the show.
We really have.
And we thought, yeah, this is great. Like shift does happen. But what is happening right now are crumbling cultures.
Exactly.
And the conversation has to be elevated and we have to meet it by way of talking about these principles and these practices in a more I don't aligned, I'll just use the word.
There you go.
In a more aligned way to really give you guys the support, not just have these off conversations about what it is.
Yeah.
But really dig into not only the why, but the how behind a modern culture and why it's imperative. And so we would invite all of you to join us at the Modern Culture Show, where we will be starting with Principle 1 next week.
I love it. Okay, you guys, we will see you then.
See you then. Bye. You have been listening to Shift Happens. Discover the Leader Within with Leah Rolling and Cari, where we help you reconnect with your inner leader. Learn to trust your instincts and live with authenticity and confidence.
Tune in every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time to Shift Happens on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights, inspiration, and actionable strategies to live and lead, not only in purpose, but on purpose. It is time to embrace a life and leadership style that is true to you. For more information, visit shift.life.